Hey everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran. I like to help people through their spiritual awakening, basically to give people guidance, general information to help them where they are at in their life, usually using spiritual perspective. Right? So today I wanted to talk about drugs and the spiritual awakening, right? Something that everybody loves. Everybody loves drugs. I think at one point in their life, everybody's tried at least one drug, right? And so when I think about being spiritually awakened and the spiritual process of that whole, basically that inner healing that happens during a spiritual awakening, basically bringing up past lifetimes, past karma, bringing things up to the surface to be healed, a lot of that has to do with escapism, escaping from the present moment using substances such as drugs and alcohol. And I'm considering alcohol as part of a drug because the FDA does, so I'm just going to go off of what they say. So basically just wanted to talk about what kind, like what to, are they necessary? Do they actually help? Is there a time in your life when you should actually be giving up on drugs? And how to know when enough is enough, right? And so basically, and I'm going to start with the most basic of all drugs, right? The one that I think everybody probably might be a little derisive on is marijuana, right? Weed. Does it actually help with spiritual awakening? Does it actually help with the spiritual process? Does it enlighten you? Does it expand your mind? Does it help, or does it actually lower your vibration? Does it impede the process of your life rather than actually accelerate it? Now, speaking from my own personal experience, I never smoked weed until I was 23 years old. Right? I'm 25 now, and 23 was around the age a little bit later that I became spiritually awakened, that I went through this process, right? So weed was, in a way, the beginning stages of that, because never having smoked it in my life, I also had a very negative connotation attached to it. But then when I started smoking weed, everything was awesome, and food tasted better, music sounded better, everything was better. The pure joy and the feelings that you would get from weed was it couldn't really be ignored, right? It was so powerful, and it helped expand my mind, and because of that, it really was like a kind of a catalyst almost for the spiritual awakening. It allowed the information to come into my brain, whereas otherwise I was sort of closed off and opinionated. Marijuana actually helped expand myself, kind of break down my ego and make me a little bit more humble, at least in my thoughts and the way that I viewed myself and others in the world, right? And I think that that's a good thing. When I look back at it, I think that marijuana specifically can help people, especially in their life, especially through their spiritual awakening. However, it does get to a point in a time when you're kind of called by your higher self, by the future you, to take on another level, to do something more. And it becomes a time when marijuana stops working. Just as you integrate yourself and become more comfortable with who you are, and you heal different parts of yourself and energies that have been lingering over past lives and stuff, you come to a sort of a time in your spiritual awakening where you realize that marijuana just doesn't do it anymore. And for me, it took me quite a while to truly give it up, to truly at least recognize that it isn't going to work anymore. Because when I first started smoking it, it did so much for my spiritual journey. It did so much that I couldn't help but try and recreate that constantly and consistently throughout my awakening when I would feel down and depressed, right? But the difference is that when you're going through a dark night of the soul, or you're going through times in your life where everything isn't going as you think it should be, or you're kind of struggling a little bit, as you would do during a spiritual awakening, escaping into marijuana is just going to kind of it's just going to pull you into a dark energy. It's not going to help you. It's not going to expand your mind. It's going to bring you down. It's going to lower your vibration and lower your energy. And overall, you're not going to be as happy as a person. And so the way that I think about it is basically like this. Do you need a drug to be happy? Do you need to escape any more from the present moment? Is there something in the present moment that is actually so uh, invaluable Or is there something in the present moment that you just can't stand, that you need to escape into a drug? When the drug stops becoming an experience and starts becoming a routine, how and why did you allow that to happen? And this is what happens with so many different things, not just drugs, but people do this, with social media or food and stuff like that. People escaping from the present moment where you don't actually need to anymore. And so you can actually look at it as a good sign, right? So if you found yourself used to being able to enjoy marijuana, weed, right? Have just after a long day smoking weed and, relaxing, listening to music and everything was fine just to get you to the next part of your journey, right? It's totally understandable. I was the same way. But if you find yourself in a mood and an energy where it's unhelpful, it exasperates old patterns, old belief systems, and makes you do bad things, bad choices, you're not really thinking clearly, that type of thing. When that happens, you have to ask yourself, have I outgrown weed? And the answer is yes, you have. We often struggle with change because when we experience something negative, we don't see it as an opportunity or a proof of our own personal development. Because if weed at one point worked for you and it made you nothing but happy, it did a lot for you spiritually, mentally, emotionally, whatever it may be, and then at some point, months down the line, as you've grown and expanded, it doesn't do that anymore. People don't look at it like, oh, I've grown, I guess I don't need it. People look at it as like, why isn't this doing what it used to do? And so they try to replicate the feeling, just as I have done with weed, right? And it's the same thing with alcohol. Basically, these things kind of come up and just to be released, just to have something to understand about yourself. I was never much of a drinker. That was never really my karma or anything like that, if you want to put it like that. However, I have drank less and less and less since I've been spiritually awakened. I mean, I was always just a social drinker. I think there might have been one time where I drank at home, but that was because of Mad Men, right? The show. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They drink cocktails at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So whenever I would watch that show, I just have a cocktail. It was just a thing. But other than that, I've never really actually just drank at home, and it's always just been socially. And so I don't think I've had a legitimate drop of liquor in possibly, it's been about 2 months for me. And even then, the feeling was so disgusting of what it was doing to my body, that, and the experience was so negative because of it, that I haven't touched it since, and I'm not sure I ever will again. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and not that there's anything wrong with any drug inherently. It's just about when you come to a point in your life that there doesn't need to be anything else, there doesn't need to be an escape anymore. You've actually made it to a point where you don't need that type of stuff to escape anymore. You don't need that type of stuff to live, to accelerate. So whereas marijuana might have been something in your life that actually helped you, and now you might find it to be kind of a grotesque type of heavy energy that just really makes you it's kind of depressing and low, and makes you, kind of gets you stuck in your head a little bit. All that means is that you've grown past it. You've actually done the work necessary to let go of it. The only thing that isn't translating is your ability to understand that, right? So you might not have fully accepted that you've changed and that you don't need that anymore. And the moment that you realize that you don't need something anymore, it's actually very, very empowering. Though change is scary, not being able to rely on something that you used to rely on, or do the same things that you used to be able to do, eat the same foods, whatever it may be. These things are ultimately, they're here to serve a purpose. And just like every single moment in our life, they come in waves. Just like, success or pleasure or joy comes in waves, in the same way that despair, sadness, and grief does, right? It's a cycle. And nothing is ever permanent. So the good times never last, but the bad times also never last either. And it's important to go with the change. So when it comes to drugs and spirituality, yes, they do. They can help you, right? And I've had experiences with the hardcore drugs, with cocaine, and I haven't touched it in 3 years now. I can't really make a case for that being a helpful part of your spiritual awakening, but I can make a case in saying that every choice that you make leads up to who you are right now, to where you are at this current moment. So I think that drugs in general help people expand their sense of self, help them learn, help them grow. And I think the important part about drugs, specifically with spirituality, is that using marijuana, acid, mushrooms, they all do different things and have different effects with a different outcome, right? I've never personally tried mushrooms or acid. Part of me actually really wants to try mushrooms. Maybe acid. Don't know if I could handle it, but I actually do want to try mushrooms, and maybe one day I'll like microdose, or if I'm in a comfortable setting and the opportunity presents itself, I'll do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to go looking for mushrooms at the end. But the point is that I do have a genuine desire to do that because of my understanding of how it works, because of what it does, what it could do, and that interests me. And so when it's a sincere type of energy, when you get into that sincere energy of wanting to grow, wanting to learn, wanting to experience something, drugs are a welcome opportunity, let's say. I'm not suggesting that you go out and stick a needle in your arm. That's not at all what I mean to say. What I mean to say is that there's an experience, it's a sincere awareness of what you might want to experience within your own spiritual awakening. Now, you don't need to look at drugs that are illegal or even commonplace in order to get an experience, right? There is something called ayahuasca, which from my understanding is basically a drug. It's a plant medicine. If you maybe don't want to call it a drug, it might be easier to call it a medicine, but it's a plant medicine, and people smoke it, and from my understanding, it kind of gives people almost like a cheat code to their own awakening. It helps them release powerful emotions and energies and outdated beliefs very, very quickly, and it's like a huge experience. I think you're supposed to fast before you do it. You have to have people around you, or it's at least recommended, I imagine. And I think there's shamans involved and stuff like that. It's a whole process. But that is, in a sense, a drug, and that is an experience and something that spiritually awakened people want to experience for their own benefit, right? If it means, sorry, there's a fly. God. If it means getting, being able to expand within their own awareness, right? And that's the same way that I look at having shrooms, microdosing on shrooms one day, because I want to expand my own consciousness in just an experimental way. And so having that idea, having that sincere attitude about drugs is actually great. It's actually positive. It's actually really helpful. It's definitely more positive than staying stuck in the same energy. And that's kind of how you want to look at things. If you're at a point in your life where the habits that you're doing that might involve drugs and alcohol, and they're not empowering you, they're not making you look with a hopeful, innocent youth like, oh, this would be a cool new experience. If that's not going on, then you know that the drug of choice, whatever it may be for you at this time, is not for you anymore. You've actually outgrown it. So you can take some time and integrate with this knowledge and sort of get out of it, take baby steps to get out of it. It took me like quite a while to get rid of weed from my daily routine. I had to go overseas. This wasn't the reason I went overseas, but I went overseas and I didn't smoke anything for about a month and a half, and I just felt so much clearer and better, and it just so happened to work out that way. So when I came back, it was like the welcome sort of relief that I needed to be like, oh, okay, I don't really need this anymore. And I think I might have smoked once or twice, a couple times since, right? Either way, not as heavily as I used to. And so each time that I smoke, it's another like realization that, I don't really need this anymore. I've outgrown it. Because it slows down your vibration. And in order to get the life that you want, you need to match the vibration of what that is. And drugs, just like anything, if you're abusing them, taking them too much, doing them too often, if they're affecting your daily life, if they're part of your routine, if they're just making you feel bad and not empowered, then you're lowering every part of your body. You're lowering every part of your spirit. You're lowering your energy. You're lowering your vibration. You're being emotionally drained, physically drained. You're not feeling as good. Your body, your emotional state, your emotional being, everything is getting lowered. And when that happens, then of course, it's a bad thing, of course. And there's no way that you're going to be able to get to where you need to go. So if you are struggling with drugs in your spiritual awakening, and you realize that they've helped you at one point, but now there might not be so much. Just remember that all it means is, if you're struggling at the moment, is that you don't need them anymore. Is that you've actually outgrown them. Okay, that's all that means. It's a great way of looking at it, and it's true. If you're struggling with something you've never struggled with before, and you find yourself struggling with it now, it just means that you're ready to let go of it. That's it. You can let go, you can be free of it, and you can actually be comfortable in the knowledge that you can actually be safe without it. And if you want to look back to your own childhood, being as a kid never needed a drug to be happy. Didn't need it. When I first smoked marijuana, it wasn't part of my routine. I think I did it maybe once every 2 weeks, and it was just this awesome experience, and that was pretty much it. And then at some point in my life, it became, I was doing it every day, and it became an escape, right? And that's when you don't need it anymore. It's just your body, your spirit letting you know that this is an escape from self, from source, from your own power, from your own intuition, from your own, your own safety, your own realization that you're safe in this moment. You don't need anything else. And things will pull us away from that understanding in order to teach us that we don't need them. Something will pull you away from yourself in order for you to understand that yourself is all you need, right? Things work kind of funny like that. It's always a deeper lesson in the pain and suffering, okay? So that's just my quick take on drugs and during the spiritual awakening process. Hopefully it helps some of you if you're struggling, and I hope to speak to you guys soon, all right? You guys have a great day.